The first bomb did not arrive with warning. It arrived with betrayal. For a single heartbeat, London was still. Then the sky screamed. At 4:43 p.m. on September 7, 1940, the air above the Thames thickened, as if the city itself had inhaled and forgotten how to breathe. Dockworkers were the first to look up. Then mothers clutching shopping bags. Then old soldiers who had survived one war and sworn there would never be another. Out of the clouds came the German bombers, cold, orderly, almost graceful. They moved with the confidence of men who believed the city below them was already defeated. The sirens began too late. Windows shattered before fear could form. Brick turned to dust. Steel screamed as it tore free from buildings that had stood for centuries. In the East End, fire rose into the sky like a signal flare announcing the end of the old world. In Whitehall, Winston Churchill stood by a window as the first distant explosions rolled through the ground beneath his feet. The glass trembled. The floor shuddered. He did not move. He had warned of this moment for years, when warnings were ignored, when preparation was delayed, when hope was mistaken for strategy. But knowing a storm is coming is not the same as watching it tear through your home. An aide burst into the room, pale and breathless. "Prime Minister. London is being bombed." Churchill removed his cigar. Smoke hung in the air, suddenly indistinguishable from what was drifting in from the burning city. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, with a voice roughened by certainty, he spoke, not to history, not to the radio, but to the men who would carry his resolve into the nation. "This," he said, "is the moment we have been preparing for." Outside, the docks burned. The Blitz had begun. Churchill refused the bunker. That decision unsettled his staff more than the bombs themselves. As anti-aircraft guns thundered into the darkening sky and flames tore through the East End, the Prime Minister demanded his coat and hat. He would go out. He would see it. A leader, he believed, had no right to safety his people did not share. The car crawled through streets choked with smoke and shattered glass. Fire reflected in puddles like broken stars. People ran, some carrying children, some carrying nothing, many carrying shock they had not yet understood. Near the docks, the heat was unbearable. A policeman shouted for Churchill to take cover. He waved him off. Climbing onto rubble, he stood exposed beneath the droning aircraft, watching his city burn. Above him, the bombers passed on, indifferent. Below him, London suffered, alive, wounded, unbroken. An elderly woman recognized him. Ash streaked her face. She began to cry, not in fear, but in relief. Others gathered. Injured. Furious. Defiant. Someone shouted, "Don't let them break us." Churchill raised his hand. The crowd fell silent. "They can destroy our buildings," he said, his voice carrying through smoke and flame, "but they will not destroy our spirit." The words spread faster than the fire itself. In that moment, fear did not disappear, but it changed. It hardened into resolve. That night, Churchill returned to Whitehall exhausted, furious, and painfully awake to the cost that had begun. Before dawn, he sat alone, cigar forgotten, ash unbroken. He knew the greatest danger now was not explosives, but despair. One careless sentence could fracture morale. One hint of weakness could invite surrender. He thought of children in underground shelters. Of pilots preparing to rise into burning skies. Of a nation listening in the dark. When he finally spoke on the radio, his voice was calm, but beneath it ran iron. London, he told them, had been tested, and it had endured. What the enemy had begun, he would continue. But Britain would not bend. The city had been struck, not broken. Across the ruins, people stood still to listen. In basements. In shelters. In homes without roofs. Some wept. Some smiled. Many simply straightened their backs. When the broadcast ended, Churchill knew one truth with absolute clarity: there was no turning back. The bombs returned night after night. Shelters filled with strangers who became families. Songs were sung underground, not because people felt brave, but because they refused to surrender their humanity. Children learned to sleep between explosions. London learned to breathe in fragments of silence. Churchill never stopped visiting hospitals, fire crews, cratered streets. Each time, he spoke less. And each time, his presence said more than words ever could. A nurse once asked him quietly, "Will we survive this?" He looked around at the wounded, the exhausted, the still working. "Yes," he said. "Because you are still standing." Weeks became months. German commanders expected panic. Collapse. A plea for peace. Instead, factories reopened within hours of being bombed. Transport resumed through rubble. Morale reports baffled enemy intelligence. One German officer reportedly admitted in frustration, "Every blow only seems to strengthen them." Churchill understood why. In those days, words became weapons. The cost was terrible. Tens of thousands were dead. Neighborhoods vanished. Graves filled faster than grief could be processed. Churchill never denied that pain. He told Parliament that Britain carried this suffering so that future generations would not have to. And history proved him right. Years later, after victory, Churchill was asked what mattered most during the Blitz. Not aircraft. Not tactics. Not even allies. Words. When London burned, he reflected, the people did not ask to be comforted. They asked to be told the truth. And the truth gave them strength. London stood, because when the bombs first fell, its leader stood with it. And Britain listened.